In this video, we are going to learn about higher order components. Higher order components are used for sharing data among two components or two or more components. By sharing data, I mean that it can be stateful data or it can be some sort of shared UI or some shared logic. So that sort of thing can be done using higher order component. Okay, so first of all, what is a higher order component? Higher order component is plain and simple just a function which takes it is a pure function. I will explain what it is later, but it is a function which takes input as a component and also returns a component. So for example, what is so there is a some function. So I'm saying that, let's say, I don't know, AASD, whatever, there is a function name. Okay, now if this function input is also some component, okay, and output is also some component, from return also you are doing, so whatever is the input, that is also a component, whatever is output, that is also a component. This is the plain and simple idea. Then ASD is a higher order component, so this is a higher order component, HOC, there is a short form for that. Now what can be its purpose? Firstly, let's understand. So we'll start with some let's say UI related thing, and then we will get into some logic related thing. Okay, so let's say what you want to do is that initially you have a component which simply displays some name. Okay, so let's say some component is there. So let's say class, let's say my div, okay, and then it simply returns it will have the render function, which will, it's not a functional component, it's a class based component, so it has to properly return inside render. And here, let's say, it is plain and simple, it simply returns a div, which prints let's say some prop. So which means that whatever prop is there, so this dot props dot let's say text is a prop which is passed. Okay, which means that you have to use something like this, and inside this you have to pass text is equal to let's say hello world. Okay, this you are passing, then this will be rendered like this. Okay, but let's say now your requirement is that uh, now your requirement, and similarly, let's say okay, we will come back to that. I'm saying just that similarly, let's say you have another component, my div 2, and let's say this my div 2, and let's say hello there. So it's straightforward, right? For the time being, let's comment the second one. I'll get back to it why I'm commenting, but right now just focus on the first one. So this hello world is being printed, right? Now let's do one thing, that okay, so essentially this is just printing hello world. So what is the purpose? The purpose is that, let's say, you are trying to do something, that okay, whatever div is there, I want to wrap it inside some other div, which gives it a border of, let's say, I don't know, 1 pixel red or 1 pixel blue, some border is coming. Okay, which means that rather than this you are trying to do something like this, that there is a div which is wrapped inside that is this, and then I'll apply some style here. So let's say style border 1 pixel solid red. And now you see that this thing is having this solid red. Okay, so let's keep it blue. So you understand, this is what we are getting. Okay, so now let's pose this question, that let's say whatever I did in this component hello world, another component is there. Okay, so this my div 2, as it is like hello there, right? Here also I want to do the same thing, if you want to do the same thing, then essentially you have to copy, and right now it is like just a single line, but you can understand that it can be very complicated, like let's say 50 lines, 100 lines of complicated JSX also. So that has to be duplicated from here to here, then only that can be done here also, right? There's another way of sharing the data, they're sharing that UI. Okay, later we will see that the same thing applies in sharing of logic also, but firstly take the example of sharing this simple thing. So again, there might be different patterns. You might be thinking that yeah, for sharing UI I have a better pattern of composition also, right? So you can have a you can have a component. Okay, let me I'll show you that also, but firstly let's see this thing. So simple and plain thing, which you might be thinking that I can have a uh, let's say uh, let's say something like this, that custom div, and this is a component, so it should be capital custom div, and then you are doing something like this, and let's say you are doing like this. I'm showing you the way where you are not using HOC, conventional way I'm showing you, right? So we know that something like this, and in this props dot children. Okay, if you do like this, then if you use custom div, then whatever you use inside, so let's say now I use like this, inside this if I do, then you can understand that this thing applies here also, and the same thing like in a similar manner I could have replicated, and instead I could have done this also. This is one of the ways which we learned. This is like composition, right? Higher order component also does composition only also, but it is slightly more advanced, which means that apart from sharing simple UI things like this, we can also share some logic also. Okay, so we'll come back to that, but and first of all, and secondly, the syntax is also like you are adding this additional thing, right? But if you are using simple like this, so you can see that without this, this second one is not having, right? So this is needed for that extra border. Now this thing I just don't want to do. Firstly, I want to do some simply like this. Let's say I don't want to have that additional thing. So what we can do is that rather than this, I just showed you an example, but we'll not use that. We'll use the concept of HOC. Now, what is HOC? HOC is that higher order component is that whatever UI or logic is there that can be shared among multiple components. So whatever I'm trying to do here, I will try to do again here, but in order to do that, firstly I have to refactor this component a bit. Okay, and how that refactoring is done is that I'll have a component which is let's say with border. Actually there is a convention like hooks start with use. Similarly, there is a convention where the higher order component starts with width. Okay, so I will have a function this, and as I said you earlier that higher order components are just plain functions. Okay, and we'll name this with border. Let's say the name is with border. So it is a simple function. Okay, and what I'm going to do is that, let's see. So inside this similar thing like this will be there. So first of all, let's say some component is passed. I'm just I'm just seeing COMP just to differentiate. I don't want to write full component because that will override with this word. But I'm just writing comp, which is a component essentially. And what are you doing actually inside the functional component? What did I say? It is higher order component is a function which takes a component which also returns a component. So what do I have to return here? I have to return here a component, a new component. Okay, so what I will do is that I will create a new component inside this function and I will return that. Okay, so let's name that. So you can name that anything. Right now I will just name, let's say ABC, some component name is there. Okay, and again it is a component only. So I have created a component, right? And then you return this component. Okay, plain and simple. So this is a function which takes a component as input and returns a component as the output. So this is the basic structure. Okay, now you might be thinking that what I'm going to do with this input component. You can use it in any way which you want. So let's say render, inside render, you can sorry, render function is there. And basically what are we going to do is that we can here use that original component. So I can straight away use this like this. Okay, now what we have to see is that whatever the component is there. So anyways, I'll show you that how to pass props. Whatever component is used here, that props also need to be passed here. But before that, let's understand that how this sharing will be done. So how this sharing will be done is that this style which is specifically applied here, I will take it from here and apply it here. Okay, so something like this, and now it's just a plane like this. It was there, so obviously you will see that now that thing is gone, border is gone. But what I'm going to do now is that you see that this whatever component is passed here, that component is wrapped with another div, and that new component is returned here. Okay, so what will happen, you tell me, that if I do something like this, my div is equal to, and I do something like with border my div, what will happen if I do something like this? You see that I passed this my div and I modified it, and then I'm using it. So you can see that there is something like border is coming, right? But there is nothing inside that. Why is that? Because you see that inside when I'm using, and again this you can name something else also. Okay, but I'll rename that if just to show you. But let me firstly tell you that if you are passing here whatever prop, that prop is here, you are not passing here, you are not passing, right? So that is the problem, that whatever the this component exact behavior was there. So if this prop text is passed in my div, then in my div this props.text will be available only whenever you are using my div, you are passing that, but you are not passing that here, right? So just for simplicity, let me rename it. So my div1, let's name it const my div1, and let's my div1. So the same thing will happen, it is not there. But you understand that why it is happening is that this my div1 you are using, so this text prop you are passing in my div1, that is fine. So so this text is passed to a component. Which component? The component which is returned from this with border, this whole thing, whatever is returned, that component you are passing this text prop. Right now what is returned in with border, you will see that this ABC is returned. Okay, now this ABC, inside ABC you can clearly see that whatever the props of whatever the props are there in comp, okay, that thing in you are not passing anything here. So if you just wanted to prove that here right now nothing is coming, if you just wanted to prove that here, if I pass this text is equal to, and anything, let's say ASDF you passed, and you can see that this ASDF is coming here. Why it is coming here? Because it is passed to comp. But what is comp? Whatever is passed to with border. And what is passed to with border? My div. So essentially inside my div, whatever this thing is rendered, this text is coming from here. That much is clear, right? But I don't want ASDF, isn't it? I don't want ASDF. I want here the thing which is passed from here, which is hello world, which means that in my div, whatever is passed, that should be available here. Now in my div, what is passed, whatever is passed to the value returned from this, is ABC, which means that here in ABC, whatever the prop is there this text will be available. It is being passed to there, which means that essentially instead of ASDF, if I use this dot props dot text, then you can see that this is hello world. See, it is a long way of saying, but you understand how this is happening. Okay. Now you can see that, okay, so I passed text, and then I am manually taking that text and passing it as a text, and that text is available. Isn't it that every time, let's say I change this to text 2, then I have to change this to text 2, first thing I have to do, and then it will work fine. But if I change this to text 2, then again it will fail, because I have to change back this to text 2, and then it will work again. You can see that at too many places I have to change if you change the name of the prop. So actually the better way is there, that this transformation, this thing you are passing, this should be sort of transparent to the HOC. So in HOC you do something like this. Rather than this, there is a syntax where you do something like this, which means that whatever props are there, just spread it and pass everything. I don't care about the name. Inside this dot props, ABC, XYZ, PQR, whatever is the name, everything take and pass it in comp. But what is this comp? Comp is this my div only, because that is what it is passed in with border, right? Now whatever is there, that will be passed transparently, which means that you can see right now also it is working. If I change here text 2 to text, then I just need to change at one place where it is used. That's it, and you can see that still it works. Okay, so I don't need to change it at many places. So this is fine. Okay, now the advantage of this HOC. So right now we have seen that with HOC it is working, right? But then what is the advantage? The advantage is that whatever we are doing right now, that same thing we can use at many other places also. So right now, so let's say this my div 2 is there, right? That is being used. Okay, let's say I want to wrap the same thing here. So I can exactly take the similar thing and I can wrap it. I will take my 2 and let's say my 2 extended, whatever, some new component is there. In fact, you don't need to do that. I just gave you an example there. In fact, you could use the same name exactly like this also. Then you'll see that if I don't use this, then my div 2 component, whatever is being used, then that component is this, where there is no border, and that's why if you save this, then you can see that in hello there is no border at all. But if you do something like this, then you can see that the border has come. So I just used one line, and automatically all the thing which was happening to my div 1, that is happening to my div 2 also, and that is because just I applied with border. Then the entire logic of wrapping this border is now shared here also. Okay, so you can understand that at one place I have written the I have written like the UI that how the transformation should happen. We will see that in the logic also we will do this transformation, but right now just on the basis of simple UI, you can see that at one place I have written, and that UI is shared using everywhere. I am using the same HOC. Okay, so that is clear, right? Now this is the example where I'm just sharing the UI, right? We can also share logic also. So for example, let's say we have some state here. State is equal to let's say we are doing some sort of counter. Let's say count. Let's say it is starting with 0, and what we do is that um, in component did mount, we have this dot set state, okay, so let's do something like this, that we are going to increment it. So it is going to be that I will take the count and I will increment the count. Fine. However, this will be just done once, isn't it? I want to increment it regularly. Okay, so just for the sake of it, first just pass this and we'll see how it goes. So we are going to pass this count state as a count prop here. So let's say count is equal to this dot state dot count. So inside the component I'm passing this, we'll do this right now. Nothing is happening. Initially it was 0. When it is mounted, okay, then that point of time I'm just incrementing, I'm not doing much. Okay, so now this new count state variable, whatever is there, it is being passed in the comp component. What is this comp component? So this is with border, I'm using my div, right? So right now just comment this, just use the first one. So in this case in the first component here, so let's save this. So we'll see that this is gone. Now in this first component, let's say I want to print this count also. Okay, which means that inside this I have already got text, but now I am inserting a new prop here, count, which means that this will be available here as this dot props dot count, and you can see that this is printing. Now the only thing is that we know that this 2 times it rendered, and that's why 2 times it might have incremented. It is like dev mode, right? One more thing I wanted to tell you, that this 2 times rendering is a good thing to detect bugs. But let's say if you want to disable it for some time, then what you can do is that you can go inside index.js, and this strict mode is there, right? If you comment this, remove that, then you will see that 2 time rendering will not happen, only 1 time rendering will happen. But don't do this, because the advantages which it comes with strict mode is too much. It avoids too many bugs. So in short term you might think that it is giving me trouble, but in long term this 2 time rendering thing will show you too many bugs if you are writing something wrong. So it's better to have that. And anyways, why we are worried with this 2 times? Because we know that we have to properly handle it. We have to properly handle it, right? So what we are going to do is that we'll do a set interval rather than this. Okay, so we'll do something like this, set interval. Inside that set interval, every 1 second we are going to every 1 second we are going to run this dot set state, increment it, right? And now this timer is there, right? So what I will do is that this dot timer is equal to this dot timer. So I have created a variable timer, and then what I will do is that on component will unmount, I'll clear that interval. Okay, so clear interval, I'll pass this dot timer. So what will happen is that now whenever it is unmounting, it will clear that interval, and that's why that duplication thing will not happen. And more importantly, now it will increment every 1 second rather than just the first mount. So you can see that this is 0 1 2 3, this thing is happening. Okay, now I have written this much logic, isn't it? If I wanted to do the same thing in my div 2, then again I have to like write this much logic again in here, right? But I don't need to do that, right? Because of the concept of higher order component. Higher order component uh, will share. See, higher order component is creating a separate new class, separate new component using your given component. It is creating a separate new component using your given. Using means what? Means that in this brand new component, somewhere they are using this also. You can see that somewhere they are using this also. That is fine. But the point is that it is completely new component. Then it can insert new UI, it can insert new logic, whatever it can do, and the whole thing, wherever you use with border, that will be automatically available. So you can see here that right now neither this counter nor the border, nothing is there in this second one. As soon as I do use this, I just use the same HOC, same higher order component, then you can see that the okay, so the same thing will be available here also, but you just have to use that. You have to use that here. Now that also, so right now I can very well do something like this. I can very well do something like this, and you can see that both are working fine. But again, maybe that I don't want that. So let's say you see that this is gone, and you see that this is like not there, right? So I don't want that every time I use this new thing, then I have to update the place where I'm using. Let's say I don't want that. Then what I will do is that rather than writing it here, right, I could have also written it directly here. So here I am passing it as a prop. Here I am passing it as a prop, right? I could have directly used that sort of logic, this sort of thing directly here also. I could have used directly here. And if that would have been the case, then I don't need to manually write anything here. Okay, so anything, those small things you can do. The basic idea is that you can share whatever logic you want starting from here. So right now, for simplicity, let's keep like this only. Now the point is that is it the case that a higher order component you can only pass a component, not something else? No, that's not the case. Why? Because higher order component is just a pattern. It's not some new thing in React. It's just a way of doing things. This thing you could have come up on your own also. What we are doing is just plain and simple. There's a function which takes a component and it returns a component. That's not a big deal, right? It's a normal pattern. If you want to do something special and you want the second argument, you're welcome to do that, right? So for example, let's say whatever we are doing right now, this thing we are doing, right? Let's say by default it is starting with from where? By default it is starting from, it says 0. But let's say I want to start with 20 or 10, whatever. Okay, then what I can do is that I can pass some value. So let's say it's a starting value, I want 10. So this is the starting value. Now all I need to do is that in with border I will have here, let's say start, and I will put equal to 0, which means that if you pass something, so for example here you have passed 10, then this thing is 10. If you don't pass something, for example here, then by default it will be 0. Okay, now I take this start, and my class, when it is being created, okay, this I will start with this start value rather than 0, and that's all I need to do. Now you can see it is starting with, the first one is starting with 10, the second one is starting with 0. Again, if I change here something, so let's say here I pass 20 rather than 0, it will become start from 20. You can see that it is starting from, first one is starting from 10, second one is starting from 20. Okay, so all these things you can do. You can also have some props. So for example, right now what are you doing? Right now you are adding additional props. Okay, you can also do that. Let's say some prop you can remove. Let's say some prop is only for you rather than rather than uh, that person, sorry, rather than that component. Okay, which means that this thing I told, this thing is one example, right? Let's say right now I don't want to do this. Okay, so this thing is gone. Which means that now I don't use this 1020 from here, rather I will use a different way. Let me show you. So this thing is like starting from 0 only, and this is like back to what it was earlier. Now, but now I want to pass 1020 something, but let's say rather than passing from here, I am passing it as a prop. So I'm passing it from here. Let's say start is equal to, let's say 10, this value you are passing. Now inside this component, so what is this component? This my div whatever the component, this higher order component, whatever it returns, right? Which means that inside this, in ABC, that will come as this dot props dot start, which means that here it will come as this dot props dot start. But I should not use it like this, right? What should I do is that I can properly create a constructor inside that props, inside that super props, and inside this, like this. Whenever you are using this using somewhere, then at while creation of the component itself, then better to keep it in constructor itself. Okay, so now you can see that whenever the component is created, at that point of time I have this start value from here. I'll get that, and this will get started with this. But what if it is not there? Then it will be undefined. Here this thing will be undefined. So then undefined plus 1, well, that will be nan, isn't it? So you can see that that's why this nan is coming, and that's why I better do something like this, that if nothing undefined is there, then better give 0 value. So now it will work like this. And now the same thing, I can here do start is equal to 20, then this thing is working fine, right? Now this thing is fine, but you see one thing, that yeah, this is start thing, why I am passing? It's not that I'm using this start thing here. No, I'm not using it here, right? I'm using this thing in a place in this HOC, but after that I'm not using anywhere. So why am so? But here I'm passing everything, isn't it? Here I'm passing everything, which means that here I have spread props and everything goes inside comp, which means that here everything is coming. Okay, here everything is coming. Text is coming, start is coming, and count is coming. So count is definitely inserted here, so that is coming fine. But apart from count, text and start both are coming, but only text is needed, start is not needed. Start is just needed inside the higher order component. I don't need that there, right? So you can also do those type of things here. So for example, you can do something like this, that const you can do something like this, that let's say you extract the value, which is start, and props, and then you see what we have done. uh, this dot props has everything. It has start, it has text, everything it has, right? Now what I'm saying is that I have destructured start, and rest of the things, whatever the rest of the things, what will be there, rest of the things only text will be there. However, I'm using this generic syntax because later if I add some new props here also, then also I just want to remove start. Apart from start, whatever is there, that I want to pass through, but start I don't want to pass through. So here what I have done is that I have taken start, and then this rest operator is there. This when in object, if you do triple dot at the end, then it is capturing other than whatever, apart from start, whatever is there, everything else is captured in props. And now I'm not passing here this dot props, rather I'm saying passing this props. And again, here you could have used rest or rest, whatever name you use, or abc whatever you use, that is fine. I'm just using props for simplicity, so that it is better explained. Now this thing exactly works in the same manner. The only difference is that now here in this component, okay, if you print this dot props, then you will see that only text and count is there, start is not there. Start was passed from here, but but from inside the higher order component, that start is removed, and that start is no more passed inside this. So that advantage now you are getting as a result of this sort of pattern. So we have seen two ways. One of configuring higher order component by passing the second argument or third argument, whatever, many arguments. Other is like directly from here. I'll show you the third way also. But before that, let me tell you one thing. This class thing which we are returning, right? This I have just randomly named ABC, right? Uh, First thing what you can do is that it should be named, like let's say if your higher order component name is with border, then its name should be generally with border with capital W. Okay, so this is just a convention, you can use any name. That is one thing, because this function name will be always camel case, so it will start with small with. Okay, so they just have the same name but with W capital, that will work. Second thing is that you don't need to have a separate return like this, you can directly do something like this also, and that will also work. However, generally I prefer this thing because it is somewhat more clear, and later we will see that we can add some more things also. Let's say I want to modify something, I want to add here something, I want to do some static property I want to add or something, so it is easier to do in this syntax. Anyways, we'll see that. So yeah, that is this thing. One thing is that this name, this function, again this can be a normal, it is just a function, right? So it could have been a normal arrow function also. Okay, so this is also exactly fine. So yeah, that is fine. Next I'll tell you the third way which I was just mentioning, is that rather than this, what you can do is that somehow can you customize the higher order component while you are creating the higher order component. So there is a thing where you can do something like this, that let's say with border is a higher order component, right? What if I create a function which takes some configuration and returns a higher order component? Is that confusing? Okay, so right now this is a higher order component. I am now saying that can there be a function which takes some argument and returns a higher order component? Okay, so let me try to explain. So let's say rather than this, I pass here 10 and I pass here 20. Okay, and here I do something like this, start arrow, and then I do like this. What does this mean? So here with border is not a higher order component. Here with border is something called higher order function. And that higher order function, when I call it with 10, that thing is now a higher order component. With border is a higher order function. With border, when I call it with some value, then the final result, this whole thing is now a higher order function, higher order component. With order is a higher order function. With order 10, the final value is a higher order component. Now that higher order component is same. So essentially, which earlier I was simply written, earlier this thing was a normal function. Now there is a value which I am passing, and that after I have called that with that value, then the final returned value is a function, and that function is a higher order component. So in that sense, you will see that still it will work exactly the same way. And here you can see that I can customize it whatever I want. So if instead of 10 I want to start it with 50, so you can see that it is starting with 50. So yeah, you might be thinking that what is the purpose of complicating these things? Actually, these things are necessary in some scenarios. So let's say while you are creating, so right now I am just passing static values everywhere, like here, here, or just third argument, whatever I was saying. Everywhere I was just passing static values. But sometimes you will see that these things can be like say proper dynamic values, or it can be functions also. So that at that point of time you might think that these sort of patterns, if you know, then you can better take advantage of it. Right now I'll get back to just the last sentence just to not confuse you, but you should just know that something like that might be useful. Okay, so this is props.start, sorry. So this is fine. Now start, I think that I'm not passing it from here, so it will be starting with 0. So let me pass at least 1. So let's say this is start is equal to 10. Okay, so yeah, so that will be all for this video. This will be a good introduction to higher order components. I can take a few examples related to higher order components in one of the other videos, but yeah, that will be all for this one. See you in the next one.